everyone. I am Miguel from Source International. Welcome to the fourth of the series of 5 video modules introducing the draft global guide on participatory environmental monitoring, PEM. In this video, I will provide an outline of chapter 4, how to conduct PEM. So once the PEM committee is well established, it can start designing, planning, and executing PM projects, campaigns, and activities. The first step we propose is conducting a situation assessment or analysis of the context in order to identify the conditions necessary for a successful participatory process so that the stakeholders are engaged in a common purpose. This includes assessing the local socio-environmental context, the community perceptions and attitudes, the applicable environmental quality standards, and the potential human rights impacts. Considering that personnel from governments and companies generally come from urban contexts, especially care must be taken to recognize and understand cultural differences with the communities where the projects are located. This becomes more important in those cases where government officials interact with indigenous communities. The rural context and the geographical range of potential impacts also generate logistical difficulties while conducting PM. This includes long trips to the monitoring points or the need for accommodation for those participants who perform the monitoring. In turn, this translates into costs in terms of time and money, and even loss of working hours for those who participate. Regarding what and why monitoring rely primarily on communities along with governments and other stakeholders for defining the initial problem themselves. In order to do that, community engagement process should be conducted. Upon arriving of the PM committee in a community, it is recommended to always begin with the process of free, prior, and informed consent, introducing the committee first to the local leaders or authorities, and then to a wider assembly of the local population. A process of informed consent should be outlined to ensure that communities first carefully understand the objectives and aims of the PM activities. Second, recognize the potential benefits and potential risks of partaking. And third, understand their ownership of the data and agree with how their data will be used and shared. In this process, people's timing and processes of decision-making should be respected. The informed consent mechanism is an ongoing process which responds to the project progress and wide challenges that may arise. Building trust is achieved by spending time in communities, not only working, but staying overnight in villages, cooking and eating together, learning the vocabulary of local languages, and showing an interest in personal stories, histories, and opinions. Through building trust, issues in relation to the environment and its protection are discussed extensively, leading to a set of specific priorities from each community, which help inform the design and implementation of the monitoring activities. Once the consent is received and a community protocol established, the PM committee inclusively engages community members in a participatory exercise. To ensure that the gathered group of community members is a representative, it is important to involve both adult males and females of various ages and different ethnicities. Working with non-literate and semi-literate communities might become particularly technological and practical challenges to overcome, as marginalized people are often not prepared for self-management and project leadership. After the initial informed consent process, where the community decides whether they would like to participate, and if so, what the monitoring aims will be, the next phase emerges, which is an exercise of collaborative and iterative participatory design led by the PM committee. The collaborative process is based on a co-working approach, including design, planning, and execution of environmental monitoring. Once the purpose of the collaboration was agreed by the community where the PM activities will be conducted, the type of information to be collected need to be defined. There is no single definition of participation, so depending on the context, the resources of the communities, and the receptiveness of the government agencies and the company involved, the PM committee performs various tasks during monitoring with the support of the technical secretariat and the participation of the PM coordinator. Sometimes this includes the choice of monitoring methods, as well as the location and frequency of monitoring. It is important to maintain a constant collaborative alignment of the goals and outcomes of the PM between the stakeholders, although it can be quite difficult to implement in practice. So regarding what and where exactly to monitor, the decision is adopted by the committee members in agreement with the local community. Therefore, it is important to monitor attributes that are relevant from a local perspective. A key consideration in all PM projects that aspires to integrate communities and other representatives of civil society into their development is the importance of addressing real-world problems and issues. However, a focus on real-world problems also requires balancing social, political, economic, and scientific interests and impact. Co-creation techniques enable a common arena where everyone contributes based on their own expertise. However, it requires a big commitment in terms of time and the resources required. During the co-design process, a deep examination of the environmental issues and the approach to solve them are addressed. This requires good independent facilitation in the form of mediation to try to guarantee everyone's participation. This will require intensity, effort, agility, reflexibility, as well as some moderation experience and personal empathy. It is also important to understand the different forces exerting themselves on the triangle of trust. Different understanding of the problem and the solution, different motivation, different needs and goals, but also different skills and different mindset. A good approach is gradual building of trust and change of mindset as early data come, and the value of that data, and also the value of an engaged and informed community of participants will become clearer. Data collection can be a complex picture with different views about the data. Therefore, the solution is to build that more complex picture together. In the planning phase, those who will participate in the field-based activities should be trained in environmental monitoring and sampling techniques and in health and safety. Participants should be trained via a pre-existing PM training program previously developed by the PM committee with the support of the technical secretariat so that standardized methods are used. The monitoring plan should include who will coordinate the overall PM activities, that is the PM coordinator, who will be responsible for the equipment, who will participate in the collection of the data, and how to reduce the risks of monitoring activities. Then a section on technical and methodological support, another about the logistic support, and finally a section on data sharing. Participants should be trained in situ monitoring and sampling methods, as well as in using and interpreting the data according to the data management protocols previously established by the committee. This should be done during room and field demonstrations on a participatory basis, that is learning by doing, and training sessions are not only vital to ensure participants are collecting high quality data, but also it helps ensure participant retention. During the training sessions, participants should also be instructed in health and safety requirements, as well as in waste management, and should be asked to sign a declaration of their knowledge. Participants should comment on their ability and willingness to provide the information, as gathering observation of activities in some areas may pose a risk to personal safety for those collecting data. So, and when they consider it relevant to do so. And in the execution phase, the actual site monitoring and sampling can be carried out by any trained participant or a member of the PM committee or by technicians of the technical secretariat. Local participants can also take photographs of their site. Members of the communities with the help of their cell phones can register and report environmental situations that come to their attention. And after conducting the monitoring activities, a participant should add their data to the committee's database with the support of the PM coordinator, including taking observational notes or photographs of any aspect of the local environment described in the committee's training manual. The committee should develop simple but robust data collection protocols and incorporate more intuitive data practice consideration to allow users to directly or indirectly follow the protocols. Location coordinates may be entered manually or by map geolocation from the participants' smart devices to the database on the PM committee's data management platform or a smartphone application. Concerning the environmental parameters to monitor, the variety of approaches to the issue of what to monitor specifically indicates that this is a complex decision influenced by the context, which influences the protocol chosen to perform the monitoring. What parameters to include in the monitoring and sampling plan should be discussed by the PM committee along with the participation of the technical secretariat and the PM coordinators. Environmental parameters considered to be included in PM initiatives may consist of physical, chemical, microbiological, physical, or biophysical parameters, and this can be measured in water, soil, air, biota, or any other environmental media. A brief discussion regarding the relevance of these parameters in the context of mining and other extractive activities will be included in the global guide. Regarding monitoring tools and technologies, it is important to have a real-time, portable, and cost-effective monitoring of environmental parameters, especially metals. The PM method incorporates a series of visual observations, for example, visible signs of pollution, evidence of residential or industrial discharge, as well as in situ measurements of environmental parameters. In fact, the visual observation is the first and oldest scientific method and takes on a particular important value in PM initiatives. The monitoring tools and the technologies used for PM should be fit for purpose, but also be easy to use and have clear protocols surrounding its use. While some portable instruments have been used to monitor metal pollution at mining sites, these instruments can also be quite expensive. It will be good and useful to have access to low-cost, low-maintenance sensors for rapid measurements of metal levels in water, soil, and air. Such technologies may also require minimal training, whereas newer devices can shorten the time in the field. Additionally, the training needed to learn to use such technologies could also be coordinated with the information campaign on the dangers of exposure to metals or other pollutants. Specific monitoring tools and technologies will be discussed in more detail in the water, soil, and air modules accompanying the global guide. Each of these three modules will also include an appendix listing monitoring technology vendors and developers. And to close this module, I would like to highlight that incorporating local communities' knowledge into environmental monitoring plan will ensure that the objectives are feasible and will increase the likelihood that community members are willing to participate in its implementation. Local traditional and indigenous knowledge offer a vast wealth of methods that can complement conventional scientific data and further broaden and deepen the understanding of complex interactions between landscapes and human development. Local knowledge can, for example, help monitor wildlife movements in a better informed way than scientific methods alone. However, while scientific knowledge is validated through a peer or expert verification, indigenous and local knowledge can have different validation approaches, which should be considered by the PM committee. Local communities and indigenous people can also mobilize their knowledge for a natural resource policy, decision-making, and stewardship of land and biodiversity. This knowledge is highly context-specific, so not always relevant to an international level or other contexts. The committee should also be aware of potential challenges hindered by the traditional beliefs obstacles. Continuous dialogue with the local knowledge holders is essential to ensure that historical and contextual complexities are not overlooked in the PM projects. This includes collaboratively and iteratively designing the interfaces between knowledge systems so they can be mutually valuable and promote shared ownership of the outcomes. Significant efforts and resources are needed to develop and maintain broad engagement with the local, traditional, and indigenous knowledge holders and collaborative partnerships over the long term. It will require adequate timeframes and attention to and tools for facilitation and mobilization of different knowledge systems, collaboration, and conflict resolution that considers right, representation, and power dynamics. And with this, we finish the fourth video module about chapter 4, how to conduct a PM. But in order to inform the global guide through a collaborative process, we would like to hear from different stakeholders regarding a few relevant key aspects. So I have one question for you. What social or technical skills are required to improve your capacity to conduct PM? Thanks for watching.